I wondered if I could share with you just a little wisdom from an American president whom I admire and respect very much. This president once said, "In short, it is a paradoxical truth that tax rates are too high today and tax revenues are too low. And the soundest way to raise the revenues in the long run is to cut the rates now." Is that President Ronald Reagan? No. Was it even George W. Bush? No. That was a quote from John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a Democratic icon, who understood that cutting tax rates actually increases government revenue. And we know this from experience in New Jersey, Mr. Speaker. The majority party tried this last decade with several increases to the income tax rate on those making over $1 million, those making over $500,000, surcharges, surtaxes, more and more, 115 tax and fee increases in all in the 8 years before Governor Christie got in office. And we saw the mess that created in 2010 when the governor came into office. A $2.2 billion deficit in fiscal year 2010 and an absolute cratering of state revenues. Conversely, in the last 4 years, on a bipartisan basis, with some support from the majority leader, who had some good ideas on tax reform. I know the vice chairman of the Budget Committee was also instrumental in helping to make the state a little more business-friendly with certain reductions and reforms to the gross income tax code. We actually cut taxes modestly, not as much as we should have, but we cut taxes in this state in the last 3-4 years. And we've seen our revenues increase. For the fiscal year 2011, we had about $29.2 billion coming in as revenue to the state. And here we sit about to enact the fiscal year 2015 budget, and without the tax increases that the majority proposes, we have about $33.3 billion in revenue coming in, if my math is correct. That's almost a 10% increase in revenues after cutting taxes. So we know that cutting taxes works. We've already lived through the horror of the tax increases that the majority implemented in the past. They didn't work. And the majority proposes to do it again. I would urge you to hold the bill and not do it. And let me share with you a couple of stories that I've heard from constituents and friends just in the last month to illustrate the point. We hear all the time that, well, these tax increases don't drive people out of the state. That's just a fallacy. It's a fact. An individual, a longtime friend, come up to me just about 3 weeks ago and said, "You know what, I had a big year last year. I was due for a bonus, and I didn't feel like sharing it with the state of New Jersey. So I moved my official residence to Florida, where he'll spend 185 days a year and still maintain a home in what is overtaxed West Essex. But he's no longer a New Jersey resident." But more illustrative might have been an individual, man I've known for some time, who just moved to Pennsylvania, to my surprise and disappointment, because he was a good friend and a good neighbor. And he said to me, "Jay, the math was simple. I have 3 adult children. They're starting families. They've got jobs, but like any other adult children, they could use a little help." And he tries to help them as much as he can. And he said, "The difference between me living in New Jersey and living in Pennsylvania was that I could provide my children and my grandchildren anywhere from between $100,000 and $200,000 more a year if I changed my address." Now, I don't expect anybody to feel sorry for someone who has those decisions to make. I don't think he's looking for sympathy either. I'd love to have those problems of trying to decide where to live to save $100,000 and $200,000 at a time. But the point is, the people that he left behind in his parish and in his community and in this state are suffering. Because now, instead of taxing some of that man's income, we tax none of it. And instead of him making contributions to his parish back home in Morris County, he's making those contributions on the collection plate out in Bucks County. He's gone. The state is not better off for having driven him out. We have driven out, and we will continue to drive out with policies like this, some of the most successful people that this state produces. But let me share one more story with you, Mr. Speaker, because this one is the one that hits home closest, I think. There's a legal secretary in my hometown who I saw the other day, and I told her what we're going to vote on down here. This woman will never, I don't think, have to worry about paying this tax. She and her husband work very hard, two-income earning family. They raise two boys and are just trying to make it. I mean, it's a struggle for them to make their mortgage payments every month. I told them what this legislature was going to do with this bill, and she got teared up because she can't understand why this legislature can't live within its means and always has to go back to the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey for more and more money. Because she understands, as a legal secretary in a law firm, she'll never have to pay that tax, but the clients of the law firm might have to pay it, or the customers of her husband's business might have to pay it, and rather than pay that tax, they might pick up and leave. And she understood. Someone whose combined income, family income, can't be more than $100,000. That a tax increase like this will be devastating to her, her family, and her children. And she begged me to tell her story down here today when we debated this bill. This bill is not about taxing 16,000 people in the state of New Jersey who happen to have a few bucks in their pocket and that you need to fund a bloated budget. This bill is about taxing an entire state and driving away the most successful people we have who support not only themselves and their families, but entire communities and the state of New Jersey's budget. It's a bad policy, and I urge this legislature to vote against it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Assemblyman.